In this video, I'm going to show you how to record an out-of-home care application. In fact, I'm going to cover this in two videos. And in this first one, I'm going to cover entering the household details and the applicant details, or applicants if there's more than one person in the same household, which is applying to become a carer. In the second video, I'll cover entering the other members of the household, so people who live in the same household as the people who are applying to become carers. And I'll also cover finalizing the application. So to record an application, click on the Services tab, which is here. If you've recorded an application before, the access to this function will usually show up here. But if not, then click on Categories, then Carers Register, then Record an out-of-home care application, and then click on Apply Now. Then click on this area here. And now you can enter the application details. Note that the system generated application number is near the top, just above the application details. The designated agency is also automatically populated with Life Without Barriers. The responsible location will default to your location unless you change it using the drop-down button. Note you can only change this to another location if the system allows you to access that location. The designated agency's application reference is not mandatory and is normally left blank at this stage. It does, however, have an important function because you can go back at a later date and enter the CERTS number here, which then gives you an identifier to link the data in both systems. Finally, enter the date and save. Next, you need to add the other details. So click on Household Address. And when you enter the first line of the address, you'll see a list of addresses. And if you can see the address you're about to enter, just click on it and the address will be entered. Next, enter the home inspection date and the outcome, which is either satisfactory or unsatisfactory. If you haven't yet done the home inspection, just leave this blank and save. You'll see on the summary page that the inspection date is outstanding and this is in progress. Now it's time to enter an applicant, so choose that option and click on Add an Applicant. Now enter the applicant's name and be careful to enter the last name at the top. It's very easy to make the mistake of entering the first name in the first box. And their date of birth. Now you're ready for the next step, which is to search to see if that person is actually already on the system. You also have the option to search by the Working with Children check clearance or application number. So that number can either be an application number, which means that they've started the Working with Children check process, or a clearance number, which means they've been approved to work with children. If it's an application number, it starts with APP and then 7 numbers and either an E or a V at the end. Now, E actually stands for employee of a designated agency, and V stands for a volunteer. Now, all foster carers are volunteers by definition, so most of these numbers will finish with a V. If it's a clearance number, the format is exactly the same, but the first 3 letters are WWC. So we'll just remove that for a moment, otherwise the system will be confused. And we'll just search on the name. So if we search on that name, we find that there are no matches found, so it's time to create a new applicant. This will bring up a Create New Applicant screen where you have to enter the title and the gender, and also you need to select whether or not they identify as an Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander. So if we say yes, we're actually given another option here, is just to say, is it either Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander or both? Okay, so we'll just leave that as no for a moment. You've also got the option to add other names. So if this person had an alias or perhaps a maiden name or something, you would put that in here. And so it's time to create the applicant. So now this takes this back to the summary page. And if you want to add another applicant at this stage, then you can do so. If not, then you can click on the summary page and that will actually take you back to the summary page for the whole application. In this particular case, I'm going to add another applicant to show you what happens if that person is already on the register. So we'll click on add an applicant. So I'm going to enter this person's name and their date of birth and click on search, and there he is. If I want to, I can actually just drill down into Peter Smith and see what other information there is about him, and that will help me to identify whether or not it is actually the same person. Just go back to where I came from and I'll say yes, I want to add him as an applicant. And now you'll see that Peter Smith is a joint applicant with Alice Grace Jones. So at this point I'm going to show you the individual checks. So we've entered these two applicants' details and now we need to add a record of their individual checks. So from the top we've got the Working with Children check. If they have a clearance number, then they'll also have an expiry date, so you complete that. And you also have the option to enter the status. So application in progress means just that. If it says barred, it means that their Working with Children check came up as having a problem and they've been barred from becoming a carer. An interim bar means there's concerns but more investigation is required. Cleared means it's good to go. And expired means that the expiry date has passed, so the Working with Children check is no longer valid. Next you have the Community Services check, and all you do here is enter the date. Let's just go down a little further. Now this field here is for a reference number that might be generated by another system used by the designated agency. So this is not mandatory, it's just there for your convenience. Has the applicant been a carer interstate, yes or no? In this next box, we've got authorises applicant for either statutory foster care or other care. So let's put statutory foster care. Next you have a list of all the different checks, the statutory checks that they need to have in order to become a carer. And you literally just fill in the date that these were completed and the outcome is either satisfactory or unsatisfactory for each one. There's no details to say why it was unsatisfactory. That's something that if this was recorded as being unsatisfactory, you'd have to approach the designated agency to find out why. Now this last field is when you're ready to make a decision about the applicant. So we'll have a quick look at the choices that you've got there. So first of all, you've got approved first-time carers. So that obviously means somebody who hasn't been a foster carer before. And they've been approved because all of the checks have been carried out. They've all been satisfactory. And this option means that they've been approved, so all the checks are satisfactory, but they were previously authorised by another designated agency within New South Wales. The next one is refused. So this means that the prospective carer's application for authorisation has been refused due to suitability or probity guidelines not being met. So one or more of these checks have proved to be unsatisfactory. The next one, which is refused agency-specific policies, this means that the prospective carer's application has been refused due to particular policy of whatever agency it is. So this may not be one of the standard mandatory checks. It might be some other criteria that the agency has for accepting or rejecting a carer's application. If it's withdrawn with no concerns, this means the applicant has withdrawn prior to the finalisation of an application with no concerns confirmed or pending. So it could be that the applicant just decided they didn't really want to go through with it. Now this option, withdrawn with concerns, means that Life Without Barriers has concerns about the person's suitability to be a carer, and normally this would be notified to the applicant by letter, and also really needs legal backup just in case the applicant decides to follow it up through legal channels. And finally, you've got data entry error, which is just a safeguard. So if you've made a mess of the application or you've entered wrong information, then if you select this, the whole record will be wiped. So once you've done all of this and you're happy with the edits, click on Save Applicant, and this will take you back to the household summary.